Hello, my name is Jacob Morris, and I'm the creator of the add-on JARCH Vis, which we're going to talk about in this video. JARCH Vis is an add-on that I created to help speed up the architectural visualization process, and it has 4 distinct parts to it. It's because you can add siding, flooring, stairs, and roofing, and we'll cover each of those parts individually within this video. Okay, to start out with, we're going to start with siding. To get to any of the parts of this add-on, you can get at them either versus the toolbar panel over here, which you can get at with T and then down under the JARCH Vis tab, or you can add the objects through the Add panel, which you get at via Shift A, or you can also find it down here at the bottom. So once we've added inside it, we'll go over the settings here a little bit. To start off with, at the top, you'll find the material. Under materials, you have wood, vinyl, tin, fiber cement, bricks, and stone. So for each one of these, it'll adjust what settings and values you can change for it. Beneath that, you have the types. So for wood, you can have vertical, several different types of vertical siding, or several different types of horizontal siding, and each has a distinct look. Below that, we have the overall width and height, and below that, we have the board width. And then below that, we have a setting that will change depending on what type the siding is. So for example, here on board and batten siding, we can adjust the batten width. But if we go over to vertical siding, we can change the gap between boards. Below that, we have the option to have the siding beveled or not, and we can change the amount of bevel on it. And below that, we have the ability to slope the top, and we can change the pitch here. And you'll see here that it tells you what the height is at the edge. And you'll notice that this is in feet. But this add-on will work both for metric and for an imperial. So for example, if over here in your scene settings you change it to metric, you'll realize that the siding stays completely the same and that all these options over here change to meters or centimeters. And so this will work in both metric and imperial. Beneath that, for vertical wood, we have vary width, and you can adjust the width variance of the boards. And below that, we have vary length. And so if we adjust this down to 0, you realize that they're all kind of centered at the center of the boards, and we can adjust that. And we can also say what the max number of boards that there can be is. So for example, there can be no more than 3 boards now. And below that, we have the option for cutouts. And cutouts just allows you to cut a rectangle out of the side. And for example, if you want to put in a door or a window or anything like that. So to do that, let's say if we want to put in a cutout that's 3 feet over from the side, 2 feet up, and then has a height of 4 feet and a width of 3 feet, we just put in that it is 3 feet over from the edge, 2 feet up from the bottom, 4 feet high and 3 feet wide, and it'll put in that cutout. And we can have up to 6 cutouts, and you can adjust that right here. So we can put in another one 8 feet over from the edge, and it'll automatically cut that out. And below that, we have the ability to automatically have the siding unwrapped and also to have random UV. So if you have a tileable material on it or image, this will allow you to get rid of those seams and make it look a little bit more random and a little bit more realistic. Below that, you have the option for cycles materials. Blender internals materials are not supported, just cycles. And we're not going to really cover that in this video just because it's pretty straightforward and simple. Below that, we have the ability to automatically update the siding. So if you need to update it for some reason, it'll just recreate it if there's an issue or anything. Below that, you can convert it to a mesh, and that makes it just so that it's no longer editable if you're just finished with it. And below that, we have the option to delete it. Now there's also another way that you can create siding, and that is, for example, if we have this existing object, and let's say we want to put siding on this face. So to start out with, we need to go into edit mode. We need to select all the faces that we want to be in the siding, and then we want to separate them from the mesh. So that's done by P and then separate by selection. We'll exit back out of edit mode, select the object. We'll shift the origin to the object itself, so that is origin to geometry. And then we want to make sure that the rotation is 0 and that the scale is 0. These are important to make sure that both of these have been applied. If they're not, then you can just apply the scale and rotation as needed. Then all we have to do is just click Convert to Siding, and it'll automatically take that shape and cut the siding to it. And you'll have slightly different options here because you no longer can adjust the overall width and height. And you'll also have gained another option, which is X offset. This is because it uses the original mesh as a Boolean object for the siding, and sometimes the Boolean just gets messed up a little bit. That's an issue within Blender itself. So you can just shift this from side to side a little bit, and that can fix that if it's having an issue sometimes. Now, if you realize that, oh, I needed another window in here, you can directly go back and edit your mesh without deleting the siding, and you'll find that your object has been returned, and then you can just delete or change and do whatever you need, and then go back and convert it to siding. And there you go. That's the siding part of this add-on. So now we're going to talk about the flooring part of this add-on. So we'll go ahead and add in a piece of flooring. And you'll notice that the settings are pretty similar to siding. You have the material, which is either wood or tile, and then you have the types of flooring below that. You also have the overall width and the overall length of the flooring, as well as the floor thickness, and then the settings below that will vary depending on what type you're in. So for example, here we have the board width, as well as the average length of the board. So for example, we can set that to 4 feet, and you'll see that there's a seam right down the center here. You can also vary the length if you want, and you can adjust the randomness as well as the number of boards that are allowed, and you can also vary the width and thickness, so you can create some pretty rough looking flooring if you want. Below that we have the space and width-wise, which is this direction, as well as the space in this ways, which is the length. And that just allows you to give as big of gaps as you want or as little as you want. Below that you can bevel it, as well as you have the UV unwrap options, as well as the random UV options and cycles materials. And then you also have the ability to update it, convert it to a mesh, and delete the flooring. You can also convert an existing object to flooring if you want. First off, just make sure that the rotation and scale have been applied, and then just click convert to flooring, and it'll automatically convert it over. And let's say that we don't want this seam right down the center, that instead we'll have varied lengths, and will allow more than more than 2 boards. We'll allow 4 boards, and this allows us to get some nice flooring here. And that's all for the flooring part. Okay, now we're going to talk about the stairs part of this add-on. So we'll go ahead and add in a flight of stairs, and you'll see that the settings here are very different from the flooring and from the siding. So we'll go over them in depth. So to start off with, you have the type of stairs. So you have normal, winding, and spiral, and we'll go over each. All of them have stair width and the number of stairs, followed by tread width and riser height. So the tread width is kind of the depth of the stair, and the riser height is, as it sounds, the height of the stairs, and you can adjust all these values. Below that, you have the option to set the steps in, which allows you to just put the tread within the jacks, and you can also adjust the overhang for that. Next, you have the option for custom treads, which we'll go over a little later in depth. You have the ability to close in the sides all the way down to the ground level, and also to allow for recessed lights. As you currently see, this jack is in the road if you wanted to model a light here or something. So if you click allowed recessed lights, it makes sure that it splits them apart and gives you a little bit room between there. Next, you have the overhang options. You always have the ability to adjust the front overhang here, and normally that's set to 1 inch. And then you have the ability to overhang just over the right edge, just over the left edge, or over both edges, and you can also adjust how much it overhangs there. You also have the ability to have it not create risers if you want to have open back steps. And next you have the number of landings, so you can create up to 3 flights of continuous stairs here, and you also will have options for each flight, as well as if you wanted to create landings or if you want that to be created later. You can also change the number of steps in each flight, as well as the directions, so we can have these flights kind of turn back on themselves and spiral upwards. Next, we have wind-in stairs, which are stairs that go up a certain amount and then turn a certain number of degrees. So for example, this one goes up 6 stairs, and you can adjust that here, and then turns 45 degrees, or you can have it turn 90 degrees, or their equivalents in the negative direction. Next you have spiral staircases. And to start out with, we're going to adjust the total rotation to 180 degrees. So we just have a little bit more of an example here. And then you can have the option to adjust the tread resolution. So currently you'll see that it's a very straight back or edge to this tread. And you can adjust that here. So let's say we'll set this up to a 6, and it'll just smooth that off and have a cleaner edge to it. Next you have the pull diameter in the center there, and you can adjust that. And then you have the resolution of the pull. So if you want a really smooth pull, you can adjust that up to 64 vertices around in it. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the custom treads. So here you'll see that we have a flight of stairs. Let's say we want to add this tread to it. So note the name, which is custom tread, and also note that the origin point for this tread right here is at the back bottom of it. So you'll see that it's right back here in this bottom corner. And that's really important. It has to be in the back on the bottom. And that's so that it gets put right into this corner right here. So you just go to the stairs, and click custom treads, find your object, and it'll put it right there. And you also have the ability to change the size of the object on the go if you want to. So let's say we want to make it a little bit longer. So just adjust it and then just go back over here, just go down and click update stairs, and it'll automatically adjust it for that change that you just made. And that's everything for siding. So for the last part here, we're going to talk about roofing. So we're going to go ahead and add that in. And to start out with, you'll see that you have the different types of materials that you can have. So there's tin, shingles, and terracotta, and we'll go over each one and what each looks like. So for tin, there's 3 different types: normal, angular, and stand-in seam. And then below that, you have the overall length, overall width, and slope. You'll have these 3 options for all of these types of siding. Below that, you have the option to have it mirrored or not. That's up to you depending on what you want. The next type of roofing is shingles. And there are 2 different types of shingles. The first one here is architectural shingles, which is the more common. And then you also have 3-tab. And they each have a very different look from each other. And as you can see, all the options are the same for shingles as they are for tin. And then next you have terracotta tiles. And you'll see that you gain 2 options here. You can adjust the radius of the tile, which is just this distance right here. And so let's say we can change this down to 1.5 inches. And you'll see that there's a little bit of lag. That's just because there's a lot of faces and vertices that are having to be created. And you can also adjust the curve resolution. So you'll see that the lag really increases the higher that you set this value. So if you are still trying to figure out what radius you want to use, probably leave this a little bit lower until you're ready to do that. Although it will only slow it down whenever it's creating the object. It's not like it lags out the viewport or anything like that. And that is most of the options just within the panels. You can also convert a pre-existing mesh over to a roofing object. So for example, here's this mesh right here. First off, make sure rotation and scale are applied. That's really essential for whenever you're converting any of these types of, whether it's siding or flooring or roofing over. We're going to go ahead into edit mode, and the first thing you want to do is select and group up all the faces that are going to be together. So for example, all these faces are going to be one continuous object. So we select all of them, we click the update/add helper object, and then we adjust these values till that object lines up. So for example, it looks like this needs to go to -90, and then this needs to go to about 612. And if you're not certain if it's perfectly lined up, just go into orthographic, wireframe, and make sure that everything is lined up well, which it is now. You can see that that lines up perfectly. Then you just click Add Group, and it'll add that group into its collection. Next, you want to add these 4 faces. These are going to be at 90 degrees, and you'll see that the object already adjusted over. Just go ahead and click Add that group. Click on, next we'll have to add these 2 faces, so we'll do this one first, and just update the helper object. Looks like we need to be at 180 degrees, and it's going to be a lot steeper. At about, yeah, a 1212 here. So next we'll just add that group, switch across to this one, change the rotation to 0, add that group. We can now leave edit mode and click Convert to Roofing. And there you go, it's converted over. Now the big thing that you'll note here is that you do not have the options for shingles and for terracotta. Those hopefully will be coming in the future. There's currently a little bit of an issue with the way that this works and how it uses Boolean objects, but hopefully that will be resolved in the future.